I think that Sean Hill is back, obviously, for Detroit, but I don't think he's as healthy or as good as he needs to be. I think Dallas, the stadium's going to be rocking. The fans would like to grab onto this one, hope that it's finally turning around, that they got rid of Romo, they got rid of Bum's son, Wade Phillips. They made the best personnel moves that they've made in 3 years. And it's funny how circumstance sometimes leads to genius. Where you're putting
desperation.
Yeah, right, absolutely. Where you're put in this desperate circumstance. It happened, and we talked about it. It happened with San Francisco turning to the quarterback. Where all of a sudden you put a guy in who's been sitting there for 2 years watching, he's been there the whole time. All of a sudden he gets in, and it's like it's a new team. How does that happen?
Well, last week I think that also you have to realize that the Giants' 3 turnovers led directly to Dallas points. And, the Giants put, I think, 456 yards total offense on the board. Eli Manning went through the Dallas pass defense like
salmonella.
That's one of your better ones. The thing is that, this Dallas defense still stinks. But you're right. I don't know if Detroit has the offensive weapons, minus Matthew Stafford, to really take advantage of it. But a couple of negative trends to note, though. Dallas 0-5 ATS is a favorite this year when laying points. And after playing the Giants, the last 9 games they have played after playing the Giants, win or lose, they failed to cover every single one of them. I just, my rule of thumb is you don't put good money on bad teams. I want to touch this game. I wouldn't even put them in a teaser and say Dallas -1 at home and a 2-teamer has to win.
Because if Dallas loses this game, their season's lost already. It's not like it's that big of a deal. You know what I mean? Detroit, same thing. Neither one of these teams are going to be around, come playoff time.
Back to the phones we go. Nino giving us a call from Fremont, California. How you doing, Nino?
How you doing?
Is this Nino Brown?
No, man. I'm just Italian.
Put them guns away.
Hey, Nino, which game did you want to talk about today?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Colts at the Patriots.
Okay, who do you like there?
I like the Patriots -3 just because I think they've sort of shown themselves as a top team in the NFL with their beatdown over the Steelers, and also kind of like a revenge game since from last season.
Last year,
Belichick went for it on 4th and 1. So I'm just thinking Patriots -3 is a great bet. I want to know what you thought about that.
Are you at all worried about the Patriots? The Patriots team that had the beat down of the Steelers were beaten up by the Cleveland Browns a week earlier. The inconsistent play by them this year?
Or was that Cleveland Brown loss the thing that shocked them back into greatness?
Well, I think Browns have been playing pretty good. Playing teams pretty good. They just barely lost to the Jets last week. I don't know. Maybe the Browns got something going on, but I just think that the Patriots are getting back on track and are going to basically take on Manning and take him down. I'm looking at that game as -3, a great spread right there.
We talked about it in the first half hour. I happen to agree with you. I also think that when Mangini played his former boss over at New England, he really did a good job of expressing to his players how this was like a Super Bowl for him. And I think that can happen. On any given day, you get a certain motivated group against another group, and it doesn't matter who's got more talent. The motivated group seems to win. I think that happened there. I think that these teams are a lot closer than people think. I think Indy and New England are very close in the talent department. 2 great quarterbacks, obviously 2 marquee quarterbacks. Indianapolis has been fighting injuries all year long. Their subs are playing really good. And I think the difference in this game, I said it earlier, is probably the home field advantage. I think New England gets a big bump off of the home field advantage. I think that probably, catapults them to the win. I like New England here -3. Not enough to play it. It's not my play today. But in the same respect, I will be watching it. It is the best game on the board. And if I had a gun to my head, I go with Belichick.
Well, the Colts this season on the road, they lost by 10 to Houston, 2 at Philadelphia, and that game really wasn't that close. In the second half, Philadelphia had a comfortable double-digit lead before the Colts scored a meaningless touchdown late, and they lost to Jacksonville by 3 on that last-second long field goal by the Jaguars kicker in that game. So, the thing that really has me concerned a bit about this game, last week Peyton Manning had arguably worst game maybe in 2 years. 185 yards passing against a bad Cincinnati pass defense that puts no pressure on quarterbacks. Peyton Manning doesn't have too many bad weeks in a row. And he's going to be taking on a New England pass defense that's right near the bottom of the league in terms of rankings, giving up nearly 69% completions this year. and they don't do much in terms of a pass rush. They had 5 sacks last week of Ben Roethlisberger, but that gives them 17 sacks in 9 games. And boy, if Manning has time behind that offensive line, coming off a bad game, we alluded to it last week. All his receivers keep getting hurt. Doesn't matter. Just like Philip Rivers of the Chargers. They find somebody else to throw the ball to.
Listen, I think that if this game was in Indianapolis gets the big win. No problem. I have no problem laying the money on the game. I just think the fact that it's in New England, that's the big difference here. I think that Indianapolis, less than perfect conditions in New England, is not the same as when they're at home under the absolute perfect conditions.
Right. They are a much faster team, definitely in the dome on the artificial turf. Absolutely. Let's go to some of our other games here on the board, which surprisingly, there's some good games here that none of the callers have touched on. I want to first, let's start with the game. I can't say it's a great game, but I think it offers an interesting matchup. Oakland and Pittsburgh. You had a Steelers team that came off a 2-1 road trip that included a loss to the Saints, barely beat the Miami Dolphins because it was a game that they got that controversial call on Roethlisberger's fumble in the end zone that gave them second life and gave them the game-winning field goal, but they had to rally from down in that game. And then, they weren't that impressive even in the Cincinnati win on Monday night. And then we saw what happened last week. You've got the Raiders coming off the bye. This team is hot. 3 straight wins, young team playing with confidence, and you're getting 7.5 points most places in this game.
Now, we talked about this earlier. Some teams, veteran teams, really good off the bye. You got a team like Oakland. Well, they're 0-7 against the spread coming off buys. So they're really not. And you add to that fact that they're coming from the West Coast to the East Coast playing a 1 o'clock game that to them is going to feel like 10 in the morning. I think between the fact that they're historically bad off the bye and the East Coast, West Coast factor, I think that gives Pittsburgh the edge here. I don't really like laying 7 points with anyone ever, but I think in this case, Pittsburgh probably wins this game by 10.
And it's a big revenge game for the Steelers because last year,
the miracle game last year.
Raiders were a 14.5-point underdog. Bruce Gradkowski.
And the Raiders stunk. It's not like this year where they're coming off 3 games where they look as good as any team in the NFL. They stunk last year.
But Gradkowski threw 3 touchdown passes, including a final one with 9 seconds left to lift them to the victory. But let's remember also, and let's play devil's advocate, the 3 consecutive wins by the Raiders this year came against the Denver Broncos, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Kansas City Chiefs. All division rivals, all of which are mediocre at best teams this year. So it's not like
Pittsburgh's really good coming off a loss. That's another thing. When Pittsburgh loses and then they come home, they're really good in that scenario. I think something like 16-7 or something like that.
So that's an interesting game on the board. Another one that nobody has really touched on today is the Green Bay Minnesota game. What a game that has lost its luster here as we've moved into the second half of the season. The Vikings, of course, finding themselves down again in the second half last week. 2 weeks ago against Arizona. Last week at Chicago, they could not pull off the miracle finish and rally. Bears really hammered them. Favre coming off a career-high performance 2 weeks ago. Typical 180-some yard, 3 interception performance. 2 of them returned for touchdowns or leading to touchdowns for the Bears last week in the loss.
Yeah, this is definitely being billed as the Percocet Bowl. Both of these teams are very banged up. I'm looking at this game as a former bookmaker. I just can't say that Green Bay deserves to be a 3-point favorite. That's the only thing that stands out to me. I get it that when these teams play, you got to throw out the records. You got to throw out where they are in the season. You got to throw out the momentum, throw out all those things because these teams hate each other. And they really get up when they play each other. But I really can see Minnesota running away with this game at home.
Yeah, Green Bay was lucky and fortunate to hold on against Minnesota in the Lambeau victory a couple weeks ago when they were playing in double revenge. I tend to agree with you here. Minnesota needs to win this game to keep its postseason hopes alive. Packers, even though they've been winning some games, I have not been impressed with them since the opening weeks of the season. Once they lost Ryan Grant, they lost a huge component of their offense.
I agree.
When Grant was running and producing 1,000 yards, it made Aaron Rodgers, all the more effective. The defense has certainly played up to snuff. Clay Matthews has been a terror with 10.5 sacks already, and Favre's definitely got to be worried about that. But I agree with you. I think Minnesota's the play here, and I think that this Minnesota team will be able to run the ball with Adrian Peterson on the ground against Green Bay's defense, and I think that's the key. Establishing the run, giving Favre a little pressure, and, of course, with Favre, as we know after 20 years of watching him, if he forces the play, then you got problems.
Right.